Hello, Bonnie. Welcome to Invisible Reality. I'm so happy to see you. And I want to know a little bit about your background first so that the viewers can know what you're doing.
Sure. It's extensive, so I'll give you just a very shortened little version of that. I started my, formal career path in nutrition, fitness, and then I became a registered nurse and worked in the field of nursing for about 15 years, primarily in critical care and emergency medicine. Simultaneously during that time, I was studying things like holistic health, aromatherapy, herbalism, and a lot with yoga, and not just the postures as we
Mhm.
hear a lot in the West, but the philosophy that goes along with it. And then in 2012, I had what I call my breakthrough. And life as I knew it just completely fell into a million pieces. That's when I was living in New York. I also owned a restaurant at the time in New York. And everything just dissolved. I set out on a great adventure of an adventure of spiritual awakening and healing for about 13 months. That was primarily through India and Southeast Asia and Nepal. That's what my book is about that we just discussed. I just published that book. And during that time, I also found ayahuasca, who I know is Mama Aya or my mother. And then from there, I started to pick up all kinds of different things. And it was really primarily for my own healing, but I was taking a lot of different courses, whether it be on sound bowl healing or Reiki, shamanic methods for healing, and had a lot of opportunities as I grew with plant medicines to be with indigenous peoples in the Amazon, as well as in other parts of the world, really deepening my own personal work with the sacred medicines, having teachers that took me on as more like assistants or apprenticeship to learn and be with them. And I I also had a foot in the other world, the Western world,
Mhm.
keeping up the psychedelic assisted therapy, all of the things that we were learning in the West as far as how we work with what I like to call the sacred medicines, because it's not just plant. There's animal medicines that we work with as well, or entheogens. I like that word. And so through time, just a lot of my own personal deep work, a lot of experiential work, as well as a lot of formal training and courses. I am at where I'm at now. On the day to day, I'm mostly working with people through Zoom,
Mhm.
although I still do see people in person when needed. Uh, COVID is very interesting. Gave me a really unique opportunity because up to that point, as I had kind of transitioned out of nursing and just transitioned into the work that I do now, it was all pretty much in person and hands on. And then I learned that I could do the same thing through Zoom and actually could do even more. That it opened me up to a whole bunch of new gifts. So on the day to day, really meeting the person where they're at. I like to say overall what I do is accelerated healing and accelerated evolution. Multidimensional healing is another word that I often use because, of course, we're focusing on things that are more in the 3D world, our current challenges and that we throw stuff, the emotions that we're dealing with, relationship struggles, all of those kinds of things. And we're following the roots down with that to see like what's going on beneath that. Is there a trauma timeline, perhaps, that's still active? that's created certain kinds of programming and resultant patterns that, where people just keep finding the same situations over and over. There's a lot of blockages to moving on to the next place that they would really like to be. So it also involves what in shamanism we call shamanic journeying. Others might call it hypnotherapy or healing, where we can access different timelines, often trauma timelines where we do the work there. We'll bring about the healing that is needed, and we kind of collapse that timeline. We bring it about so that whatever we experience, whatever disempowerment that we experience there, whatever emotions of hurt or anger and things like that, that can all be processed in that space. And then ultimately we're able to give that part of ourselves the now an empowerment and agency of choice
Okay.
that felt was taken away from us. There's a lot of energetic realignment that happens, kind of tapping into people's energetic fields. There's a lot of just sort of like reorganizing of the circuitry, helping people move big energetic blocks. Sometimes it's somatic. There's vocal work often involved. Teaching people to how to feel feelings. That's a very
Yeah.
what I do every day. Just teaching people how to feel their feelings. It wasn't something that I learned how to do. It was something I had to learn how to do. And so teaching people how to do that in a safe, empowered way, coming into right relation with our emotions. That's a big, I'd say, very big part of what I do. It's really quite varied. Sometimes it's more like psychotherapeutic in nature. Some more like coaching in nature. Just kind of depends on the day and the person. I have so many different modalities now that I can bring that I just tune into the person and see what it is that they need. Sometimes it's just validation,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Like you're doing everything great. You're on the right path. Keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, I could kind of go on, but hopefully that gives like a kind of a broad
Background.
view.
Yeah. So you mentioned you were a nurse working in critical care, right? So how did that influence your journey in energy medicine and shamanic practices? Did it have an
Well,
influence on it, or like how did
absolutely.
it affect it?
Absolutely. It's helpful every day in so many ways. I would say overall, the ability to be a calm, centered, and grounded presence in the midst of a sea of chaos,
Yes.
which is often happening, say, in certain settings that I'm working in. Overall, that would probably be a big one for me, while being in that place of doing and tasking and taking care of things, also being compassionate and empathetic and nurturing at the same time. Nursing helped me to be very, very good at doing those things just as a second nature. I see a lot of the good in allopathic medicine for sure. That's why I chose things like emergency medicine. Like we're really, really good at trauma. We're really
Yes.
good at strokes. We're really good at heart attack, heart surgery, and, sepsis. And
But it feels like it's in emergency medicine, it's not healing, it's fixing.
right, that's what we're good at.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, in having so much of a more holistic viewpoint in nursing, it would have been conflicting for me to work in certain areas. But this was an area where I felt like, you know, yeah, if I got in a car accident, I would want to go to the emergency room. That's where I would
Mhm.
go, So working in the areas where I felt like I could really get behind what we do and see that what we do is very effective and very, very helpful in those crucial moments. And beyond that, I would say that there is, especially from the the nursing side and probably the social work side as well, we do tend to people in moments of crisis
Mhm.
and hopefully are able to hold them in that place of deep compassion and empathy and give them the hug and the emotional support that's needed during that time. So there's certainly a lot of good things. But, I always say, have relayed back to one story. I would often sit around in the emergency room with one of my doctor friends, and I would say, you know, half the people are here because they just don't know how to breathe.
Yes, I
And,
agree. I don't know how to breathe.
right?
Yeah.
And he would laugh. He was like, oh, ha, ha, ha. And he would like joke. Like, that was always kind of like a common joke with us, Bonnie, like, well, Bonnie, like, look at me. I don't know what I'm doing, how I'm still alive. I don't know how to breathe, and it's fine. And we would make jokes but there's absolute to that,
Yes.
of course. And seeing, of course, so many people coming in with psychosomatic illnesses, like recurrent things where we would give them the CAT scans, we would give them the MRIs, we would give them all the diagnostics, and just to say, like, there's nothing wrong with you. And the person is sitting there desperate and feeling, and they're in despair, saying, I know there's something wrong with me. I know there is. And of course, that's where we get into the energetic, right? The deeper traumas, the suppressed emotions. It can be ancestral things that are components that are there, and would be so really far out to some people, but very common language and common sense for me. Even things like past life,
Yes.
things that are happening there, right? Karmic things
Yes.
that are going on. And that's, of course, where the system falls really short and has failed people over and over and over again, who either don't have access to those kinds of things or have never even been told that exists.
Mhm.
That this is another way, this is another avenue here that you need to go down. And so, of course, that's the work that I bridged into. I got to see what was missing. I got to see what was needed. And really, just by the grace of spirit, all just kind of showed up for me. And then, my intuitive gifts got blown open, and then I was able to now meet people in a different way that they've been, even in therapy, even in psychotherapy, can be very limiting. I worked with a client the other day who said the last two therapists have told her they don't believe in forgiveness and she should stop focusing on forgiving. And I'm okay. Well,
Yeah.
that we're holding on to all of our anger.
Why would you hurt yourself?
Why
That's
do
hurting
stuff
yourself.
like that? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned too multidimensional, right? That's the word you said it. So explain to me the concept of multidimensional healing and how you apply it in your work.
Yeah. So multidimensional means that, like I alluded to a little bit earlier, I work in multiple dimensions. So we can be working here in this space-time reality, working on the stuff that's going on right here. And then we can also be working in the quantum realm, where now we're opening up to all possibilities, all timelines.
What do you mean by all timelines? Because I'm very interested in that because I've read like here and there, but I've never seen anyone that could explain it to me. Like
Okay.
wasn't their
Yeah.
work to explain
Yeah.
it. So since you do that, what do you mean by different timelines?
Yeah. So we see here in our space-time reality that we see it very linear. We have a
Yes,
past, we have a present, we have a future.
true.
And we are only tuned in to one particular reality or possibility perhaps that's happening, right? Like, because we're in our space of our mind, which is very limiting.
Because that's what we see.
Right. That's what we
Yeah.
see with our
Yeah.
physical eyes. That's what our mind is trained to do. And so when we work outside of a space-time dimension, which can be, often referred to, I like the word quantum space, the quantum realm.
Yes.
I think that's a
Yeah.
good word for it. Now we're opening up to where there is no past, present, or future anymore. All possibilities of every single timeline exist. All timelines exist. All versions of ourselves exist there, right? We're talking about now the realm of imagination, right? We're
Okay.
accessing a different part of ourselves to
So,
understand and see that all timelines are running there. All
so I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can can any medication or plants enhance that?
absolutely. Yeah.
Because I've been there. Like I've been there. I told my husband once, I saw myself in all my lives, like a baby, a toddler, at the same time.
Yeah.
And now, and it was mind blowing because I feel it, but I don't know how to explain it to them.
Right.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Very difficult for the mind.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's a lot of cognitive dissonance comes in because we have so much programming that's telling us otherwise, that telling us that's not real, telling us that's not possible. Right. So absolutely, there's many ways. Sacred medicines are one way. They are now activating our pineal gland.
Yes.
Right there. And then often we're working now with a substance like a DMT, which we know is the spirit molecule that is opening now our inner eye, right? It's not the physical eyes anymore. Now it's inner eye, which sees in all directions everywhere and is attuned to this realm, right? Outside of space time dimension. And so when we activate this part of ourselves, right, that's when we start to get it, right? That's when those like little epiphanies come, those little moments like, I get it. I
Yeah.
don't know how to explain it,
But I get it.
but I
Yes.
get it, and that's the knowing, right? There's a big difference between a belief and a knowing. And, people can say all kinds of things. Well, I hear you and I believe that to be true,
But I don't know.
but I don't know that in a full embodied way that that's the truth, right? And so absolutely not only sacred medicines, but definitely things like breath work,
Mhm.
meditation, those things as well become the portal where now
And
we open up what's already inside of us.
and what does that benefit the person?
Yeah. Well, for one, it gives us what I call the zoom out perspective.
Mhm.
It gets us out of our little tiny reality where we are so focused on our little movie of ourselves every day and caught up in all of the little minute details of what is happening here. It can often, especially if we're working with trauma, keep us in a victim state. It creates the illusion of separation between us and something bigger than ourselves. And so when we open up to the realm, not only the realm of all possibilities, but the realm where we experience the oneness and the connectedness of all things
Mhm.
and the love, the frequency of love that ties all of that together, that fabric, that holding that together for us. We receive a healing. It happens on such a deep cellular level. It goes so far beyond the mind. And it also, as we know now, can restructure our DNA. So whenever we're having those kinds of experience, what we call a non-dual experience, something shifts in us. We actually now are evolving our consciousness,
Okay.
right? We're growing our consciousness. We're becoming more conscious.
Oh, wow. Yeah, awesome. And what are some of the most common ancestral practice patterns, I mean, of ancestral patterns or traumas that you encounter? And how do you approach it in healing?
Yeah, great question. Okay. One that I encounter a lot, and it might be because this is something that I have helped to heal in my own family lineage, would be sexual abuse.
Yeah.
It's a big one,
Yeah, and it's more often than we think, but people don't talk about it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. People are only now beginning to talk about it,
Yes. Yeah.
and really being able to come forward with what is happening often for generations, right? And so I always say, like, when we're dealing with something like this, in shamanism, we say when we heal for ourselves, we're healing for our lineage forwards, right? Because again, it's not linear.
Yeah.
So we're doing it for all of them,
Mhm.
and we do that work. And once we do that, we also do sometimes have the opportunity to go deeper
Mhm.
with that. So, for example, I have worked with the sacred medicine to help set my ancestors free
Mm.
from certain types of bondage, right? Abuse that kept my family lineage in such a space for so long.
So
So
when you talk about set it free, you mean future lineage or like past? All
it,
of them.
it applies to all of it.
Okay.
Uh, but it would be like, so say if our ancestors have sort of been locked in like a static timeline,
Mhm.
say, right? And that has perpetuated
Okay.
what has been happening. Then we can go back and actually clear our generational history. And I've actually had things, where I worked with certain relatives to access their in certain time and actually did the work to help set them free of their own guilt and
Okay.
their own guilt and their own pain. And so, yeah, that can happen quite a bit. Another one I would say is scarcity and lack.
What
Lack
do you mean by that?
programming of scarcity and lack. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and and that can be around money, but it
Yeah.
can also just be around the fear of like not having enough,
Mhm.
not being enough. All
Self-worth,
programming around money.
self-worth can go the same category or not? Self-worth, I mean, is it in the same category of lack or is it different?
Yeah. Yes, I would put that in the category of lack and self-worth. If I follow any trauma or difficulty challenge that somebody might be having, if we follow the route all the way down,
Mhm.
usually at the end is that I'm not worthy and I'm not enough.
Yes.
That is tremendous. I got a little gnat flying around me something here. That is just across the board
Mhm.
what I see as a root issue that needs healing for so many of us, that we come here to remember our worth, that we do not have to do anything to deserve abundance, to deserve enjoyment. There's nothing to prove that we are enough exactly as we are. That is one of the deepest healings that we receive as we continue, self work. And again, that's something that a lot of we can get that so much through work, especially with sacred medicines, but also just in spiritual practice in general. That would be something that I believe we all come here to work on.
Mhm.
And we know that loneliness is an epidemic now,
Yes.
right? Like and I would say so many people that are coming to me, they feel lonely. And that loneliness, I find, is also connected to the I'm not worthy and I'm not enough.
I feel like many people feel lonely not because they are alone, they feel they don't fit in with others.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of people feel the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Yeah. It happens all the time. We use the word imposter syndrome a lot now, where people just, they're in a group of people, colleagues, whatever it may be, and they feel like they're not enough,
Mhm.
like they're pretending they shouldn't be here. And that then separates, right? Where they then don't feel that sense of belonging, that then they can feel lonely in a crowd.
True. So, how do you integrate Western medicine and practices into your shaman's practices? Do you do like integration or you do it separately? Like each one is separate entity.
I don't really. So if we're coming from like the Western that I was a part of as far as critical care and medications and things like that, not really doing a whole lot with that. When I have people who are wondering if they should perhaps take a certain medication, but they're hesitant in some way, it might come in there where we talk about that together, how they're feeling about that, uh, what they feel the risks are, what they feel the benefits are. Because I've had a lot of background and understand, especially pharmaceuticals and things like that, I'm able to have those conversations with people. It's very important if anybody is going into wants to work with any of the sacred medicine. There's many contraindications, whether that be certain or even over the counter things that they might be taking, even certain herbs that they might be taking, certain health issues, whether that be health or physical health issues that might be contraindicated or could exacerbate or create a problem for them. So I'm taking a lot of the knowledge in that way and applying it in a way that we want to make sure that if anybody is going to move forward with a certain modality, that it's safe for them,
Yes.
health wise, etc. So I do, because I have some extra insight,
Yes.
so than other people do, particularly as I did cardiothoracic surgery, that I just kind of understand the heart a little bit more than other holistic healers might. I can give people a little bit more insights.
I feel like you have the advantage of being a nurse in critical healthcare because you have the background to help people when it comes to medicine. And not all holistic healers have the same background.
Yes.
So I feel like you gain that, like, people trust you in discussing those kind of topics,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly it absolutely has been a huge advantage for me in the work that I do now, often to have the understanding and especially to be able to, guide somebody to say like, no, I have I kind of know what this is and I don't think that this is safe for you. I think this is something you should stay away from, right? Or you need to do XYZ before you think about doing something like this, right? That absolutely is there. Yeah, just kind of having an understanding of how all of the systems work together.
Yeah.
Uh, lots of things like that. It has for sure come in handy for me in a multitude, in a multitude ways, probably things that I just don't think about, you know.
Yeah. And you mentioned in the beginning that you went to India, you went to so many countries in your journey. Can you share a transformative experience from your time studying in Peru?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Specific. So there was the time where I was working in Peru with the medicine we know as ayahuasca.
Mhm.
And ayahuasca does a real number on us physically, right? Like working on so many aspects of ourselves, energetically, emotionally, ancestrally, etc. But also we have often a big physical
Mhm.
cleaning or a big physical purge. And I went through a period. I want to say it was at least a year where I was so nauseous, so sick going into a ceremony that I would literally be doubled over. I hadn't even had the medicine yet, and I would already be doubled over with nausea. And then I would drink the medicine and I would sit there and I was just doing, I would just pray, like, just let
Mhm.
me down just enough to like get something, some kind of
Mhm.
here, some absorption, like just let me hold it down long enough. And I would be the entire time just so sick. One time I remember this is just coming in, so I'll share this as well. I was so physically ill. I mean, I could only crawl. That's how sick
Yes.
I felt. I kind of had stuff coming out both ends. I had never had an experience of feeling so sick in all of my life. And I've been pretty sick at times. Nothing would even come close
Okay.
to how sick I felt in that moment. This was when I was still full time in nursing. And I just remember saying over and over again, thank you, thank you, thank you. It gave me such an insight into the people that I was working with on the day to day who feel that way. It gave me so much empathy for them to really understand, like, what I'm asking them, like, take this pill and drink this water and get up and, all of these, and that's how they feel.
Yeah.
Well, just so to bring so much like more compassionate care and gentleness to people in those moments. That was a big teaching. And then beyond that, as I sat with this nausea for so long and I would just have to go back, drink more, try again, go back, drink more.
Was it from the ayahuasca or was it what was it from the nausea?
Well, ayahuasca can make us very nauseous. Yes, if
Okay.
we're moving big energetic stuff, we've
Oh.
got a lot of even physical toxins and icky stuff to clean out. We're gonna purge, right? It's called the
Yes.
sacred purge. It's a big part of it, and it's a cleansing, right?
Mhm.
It's a release. And so but I couldn't even keep the medicine down. I mean, it would just come back up. I was just so nauseous all the time. And so finally, I had this epiphany where I realized that, and it was actually very interesting. And I know some people will think this is just so crazy sounding, but it's very real to me. I had what I call the spirit of nausea came to me. The spirit of nausea was like this little indigenous looking man. It said, I'm the spirit of nausea. I'm your teacher. Once you have to learn everything that you need to learn from me, I'll go away.
Oh my God.
And first of all, I always say, like, medicine teach us how to sit with uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? And if we're gonna be working in medicine long term, we need to learn how to sit with uncomfortable. And that it carries over to our everyday life.
Mhm.
Well, we tend to we'll do anything not to be uncomfortable. We'll run from uncomfortable. right? We have a lot of difficulty sitting with uncomfortable. And so on one level, it taught me how to sit with uncomfortable. On another level, I learned that the nausea had to do with my fear.
Mm.
It
Fear of
was
what?
all about fear, all of the fear that I had been carrying, fear of not being enough, fear of not being perfect, fear of being alone. I mean, just so many different kinds of fears. And ultimately, the fear of being my biggest, brightest, most powerful self, knowing that part of myself, that was my biggest fear. And so I had this whole process with ayahuasca through many, many ceremonies. And sure enough, once I got it, once I turned toward the fear, once I released those fears and stepped into learning how to stay comfortable and lean into it and learned how to now step more into this more powerful version of myself and really shine that light into the world, nausea went away. Never had it again.
Even when you take ayahuasca?
And
Oh my
it's been
God.
some time since then.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I believe you. Yeah. It has a, I think many people don't know the big effect of uh, ayahuasca and plant medicine and energy medicine. And I don't blame them. They think it's crazy, like it doesn't exist. But they know there is not enough people who are speaking up about it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're talking about it. So another question is, what role do plant medicine play in healing, especially in your healing practice? And how do you ensure that it's safe and ethical?
Mhm. Yeah. All great questions. So, and it's a multifaceted question.
Yes.
Uh, so the healing happens on many levels.
Mm.
Some medicines are better at certain things than others. So for example, if we're just talking about we're coming with a physical disease, say like something like cancer.
Mhm.
For me personally, I'm gonna usually send somebody like that to ayahuasca.
Okay.
I really feel like ayahuasca does a very, very good job with this particular disease. Though I've seen her work tremendously in many ways. I talk about this in my book. Where my friend had a hernia and he had to wear like a binding dressing on his torso. And he drank ayahuasca with me that night in the jungle. He had a lower purge and lots of interesting things came out. Hernia went away. And he was at the point where he was going to have surgery. Like the doctors were like, this is the only way. You can't, you can't keep doing this. It's too dangerous, etc. And that was it. He was healed. It was that. I see like all kinds of things like that happening.
So those experience, you saw it with your own eyes, like you experience it.
Absolutely. I've seen people who could not walk say there's something like a neurodegenerative disease, like a neuromuscular thing that's going on. I've watched them go from walking like walking with a cane to walking without a cane. I've seen it before my very eyes. I've seen people heal their stage 4 cancer. Uh, Yeah, I mean, if I sat and looked back, I could probably give you a long list. I have my one friend, I called him the boy in the bubble. He couldn't be around anybody because he
Yes.
was so allergic to everything. He
So
now travels and goes on planes and
so why do you think it's not popular, and why isn't it integrated in modern medicine if it has this effect on diseases?
well, I think that it's gaining in popularity. First of all, I think there's plenty of awareness now, at least as a general rule, like people are becoming more aware of these things. I would say, especially something like psilocybin, synthetic, perhaps like MDMA or ketamine. Those are becoming very popular now. All the clinical trials have been done. They're doing that now with people in clinical study. But as a whole, of course, like in our society here, everybody wants evidence-based
Yeah.
research, right? And so that would take a long time, I think. And of course, I think there's other resistance there as well. How are certain companies going to make money? You know,
Yeah.
we have access to these medicines, and we can just go to the shaman, who's going to service this medicine and help us, heal something that would otherwise maybe cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and maybe we don't heal from it. I think also there has just been such a long history, in the psychedelic renaissance that took place in the 60s, everything kind of got botched a little bit, right? Like we didn't do it so well last around. And that gave sort of like this dark cloud over, and when everybody lumped all of these things together as drugs,
Yes.
and drugs are bad, right?
Well, ketamine is a drug, but
Yes,
it's a medicine too.
yes,
So I think all drugs are medicines in a
yes,
different quantities and dosages.
yes. And I would not call something like ayahuasca a drug. That would be incredibly irreverent on my part, because we're talking about something that has sentience,
Mhm.
right? We're talking about now plant medicines that have actual sentience. They have intelligence. They know where to go in our bodies and how to help us, right? And so back around to that question, so on one healing level, we have all of the physical healing that can happen with some of these medicines. I would say like ones that I've seen up close and personal would be mushrooms and ayahuasca, right? Like these are the two that I've seen the most that have had this effect. Emotional healing, right? A lot of these sacred medicines are purgatives. They're helping us to purge, release the emotions in one way or another. Sometimes it's through vomiting. Sometimes it's through stooling. Sometimes it's through sweating or thrashing or sound or yawning, laughter, even, right? Many ways that we might release a lot of the suppressed emotions that have been there and have been creating so much dis-ease for us on so many levels. All the way at the top, I'd say like the entheogens are here to help us remember who we are.
Mhm.
They help us get out of our little tiny ego mind, where we live in the illusion of separation, where we feel like we are not connected to one another, nor are we connected to Creator Source Universe. And the medicines, these sacred medicines, they help us to reconnect. They reconnect to the light and the love and the pure essence of beingness that we are at our core. They connect us to one another. So now we can see the oneness and the sameness that exists in all of us, what I call the soul self, or the Christed self, sometimes I call it. And then it also rocks that veil, that illusion of separation between us and Source Creator.
Mm.
And so we now have a greater sense that there is something that is so powerful, so loving, and so deeply compassionate and wise, that we can nestle in, that we can take refuge in, and that we can learn to co-create with. It opens our mind and expands our consciousness, right? And when we expand our consciousness, we remember that we're only fated to a certain thing by, say, like a genetic illness or because of something that happened to us, if we believe that, right? And we're living in that kind of reality. But once we open up and see that there's so much more, now we can actually work in our destiny line. We can write our own story. We can co-create. We can manifest. Being at a higher vibration because we release so much heavies, as they call it, heavies, like the heavy emotions, shame, guilt, fear, anger, sadness, pain. And then we're thereby operating at a higher frequency. Well, thereby law of attraction says what we put out is what we get. So
Yes.
things just start to flow. Things just start to, life is better. We get more joyful. We get more happy.
So the last part of the question, how do you ensure it's ethical and safe for the clients, for the people who you heal?
Yeah. So whenever I am either, if I'm working outside of the country where it's legal in certain areas to take people to work with these medicines or referring them to somebody who is uh has the legal status and whatever way that might look, different states, different laws, different countries, etc. The first thing that I'm going to look at is their history. I have about, I, I don't know, I think I'm probably up to 30 questions or something like that, a pretty extensive intake form where I'm looking at all sides, the physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual beliefs, kind of like a whole range of things, is including like what kind of medications they might be on. And that is going to give me some really clear guidance as to what medicine is going to be safe and what medicine is going to be, have the greatest outcome for a specific person. Ultimately, I say, like with people, what I'm looking for is that they feel called to a medicine,
What do you mean?
that they actually have, like when they've heard this certain word, like, I don't know, I just heard about ayahuasca and I just
Okay.
felt it in my heart that this was something that I needed to do. I like that,
Okay.
right? Because that medicine has already reached out and said, come on in.
Yeah. So it's their time now.
Hey, it's your time. Let's go. Versus somebody who is looking, I say some of the red flags would be somebody who's looking for a quick fix. I
Mm.
just want to go. I just want to go to a ceremony. I just want to take this medicine. I just want to fix myself and go on. Oh, red flag. Probably not going to be a great idea for that person because not only are they likely not going to do the proper preparation, but they are not going to do the proper integration.
Okay.
So that would be a big red flag for me. Group ceremony versus a private ceremony. Some people have certain triggers, social anxiety, certain traumas where they're not going to be a great fit with a certain person, a certain practitioner, or a certain kind of group. So a lot of different things like that are going to come into play. And then with practitioners, for the practitioners, that's when somebody is, say, vetting, right? It's like, if you want to go here, if you want to go to this center, if you want to work with this, right? Whatever it may be, here's my list of questions for you,
Okay.
right?
It's like a survey or a questionnaire.
To ask the practitioner things that they should be able to answer,
Okay.
right? And if they're giving kind of like, well, why are you asking me this? And I don't know, like, oh, red flag, don't go to that person.
Okay.
Everything from like, look at their energy, right? Do they look healthy? Do they look grounded?
Mhm.
Do they appear to be healed, to a certain level, enlightened to a certain level, right? What's their training? How long did they train? Where? With who?
Mhm.
Who are their teachers? Who are their teachers' teachers? I want to know all of these things when I go to somebody, right? What's their screening process? What's their code of ethics? Do they have a code of ethics? Is it written down? What about mutual agreement, participant rights and responsibilities, right? I want to see all of those things in place. And
Okay.
it's not like every single component needs to be there, but a lot of them need to be there. And it's a red flag for me if somebody is not doing their due diligence with that. There's a lot of practitioners out there right now that are dangerous.
Yes.
They have not done adequate training. It is not an uncommon story for somebody to go to the jungle, have ayahuasca 3 times, and come back and call up all their friends and go, "Hey guys, I got some ayahuasca while I was in the jungle. I'm going to do a ceremony. Come on over."
Wow.
Or that they're ready. I see that a lot with people. I feel called. I'm ready. I know it. The medicine called me. They told me it's time. It's like, no, that's your spiritual ego that's telling you that. Medicine would tell you that because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so much involved in all of that. This is something that I've been blogging about, posting about on social media, talking about on other YouTubes, like shadow side of plant medicine, all of that. Like that's a big deal. And I always say to people, you got to begin with the end in mind. So at the ceremony we say is the initiation. It's what you do with it.
Mhm.
It's how you implement, what you've learned, how you get new tools, like the deeper work that you're going to do with that it really makes the difference. And this is why people will say, like, well, I don't know. I just keep going to ceremony and ceremony and ceremony and it's not working. I feel better for a little while, but then I feel worse again. It's like, yeah, that will continue to happen if you don't actually do the integration work. And so that's why, my emphasis and so much of what I'm doing with people on the day to day is on integration process. People.
And can you explain the concept of ascension in your work and how you guide clients through this process?
Yeah. So I love this question.
Yeah, me too. I've been waiting to ask it.
My definition of ascension is a little bit different than everybody else's. A lot of people think ascension is like, we're just gonna all of a sudden become like the happiest in sun, just we're gonna become like mega conscious and we're just gonna kind of like zoom out somewhere or to some other realm. And that's what ascension is. And that's not what ascension is for me here on earth in a human body. I see that as we go through life, we have many things that happen, many traumas, a lot of suppressed emotions, a lot of limiting belief. There's a lot of things that weigh us down. There's a lot of faulty programming that happens, right? And so it's just covering up what we already are.
Mhm.
You are already pure love, light, all knowing, we are all of that already at our core. That is who we are. And that's what I call the soul self or the Christ itself. Right. And that self is fully healed with nothing to heal, fully forgiven with nothing to forgive, and is the all knowing, all loving, all compassionate, all wise self who can co create, who can access multiple realms and multiple dimensions, right? And so in this human body here, we've got all of these programs and all of these things in place that weigh us down and keep us from that remembrance.
Yes.
Well, ascension to me is releasing what I call the heavies, all the big heavy emotions that weigh us down. So we can just uncover the lighter love, joy, peace, the the higher frequencies that we already are, and that we've been. And then unraveling all of the faulty programming that has kept us in limiting belief and cognitive dissonance. And so we're just basically doing a lot of releasing and a lot of unraveling. And at the same time, yes, we can do what's called like upcoding, right? Or reprogramming or downloading our divine soul blueprint. Lots of different terminologies people might use. But we're here to be earth people. We live on it. We live already on a beautiful planet. We live on the Earth star. Somebody else, we're aliens too. You know, and so for me, Ascension, as we've chosen this to be here in this human body, is to, what I say, learn how to be both fully human and fully divine.
Beautiful. And how has your understanding of trauma and healing evolved through your work with both Western medicine and shamanic practices?
Whoa, tremendously. It's continually evolving because we're learning so much.
Yes.
We're learning so much all the time. I can't even keep up with it hardly.
Yeah,
Um,
I was thinking like, how do you keep up? You have learned so much, and I think you do learn every day.
all the
It's
time.
a lot. Yeah.
All the time. I'm always reading conferences, like lots of different things. So one thing that I see, that was such a missing component back in the day when I was a nurse and there was just no focus on it at all, is the connection between trauma and the microbiome. And so we are understanding now that trauma has a direct impact on our microbiome.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
so if our microbiome is all messed up, right? Well, that's just going to affect everything. So that I feel has been one of the most interesting things that has come out. There's a woman that I love. There's a couple. One is Dr. Amy. I forget her last name. She's a medical doctor. She goes by Dr. Amy. She's made it her whole mission to just study the impact of trauma on physical disease.
Wow.
And so I've learned a lot through her. And that's one of the things that's really stood out to me is,
Does she do researches, or like does she has articles, or
yeah, she does podcasts. I believe they're
okay.
doing research. Yeah, she works with a lot with this other guy, Alex Howard, who I really like. So they're focusing a lot on some of that aspect. And I always say, like, science is just catching up with what the shamans you've always known,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like you go to a shaman who's been trained and doing this and is like in his lineage and he like grew up, or she, like grew up like this. Like all they've got to do is look at you. They're giving you a CAT scan. They're giving you an MRI, right? All they've got to do is look at you. And they can point it out like, oh, here's a trauma imprint here. Here's a trauma imprint here. Here's one here. This is when you were 5. This happened. This happened, And so then they're able to, in whatever ways, in modalities that they work with, because everybody, shamans have many different ways that they work with it, right? Are now able to start helping people release, first of all of the emotional component that comes with that, as well as now like reorganizing this wiring or this imprint or this place of stuckness or stagnancy. So I kind of, I like a little bit of everything. So when I'm working with somebody in trauma resolution, we're going to look at the physical body and its organs and see like, what's going on, right? Like especially if they're already coming with some physical complaint, what might be going on there and how might that be related to some trauma, to some unresolved trauma. I'm going to help them to now look at all of the emotion that are there with that. I'm a real big fan of, of course, Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote like The Body Keeps the Score, Peter Levine, Waking the Tiger, as well as Dick Schwartz, who does internal family systems. And very interesting, right? How through his model of how through trauma creates these parts of ourselves that are called like managers, they're like protectors or the firefighters who come in. But sometimes I like to look through that model with people, see like, do you see like where different parts of you are working here in trauma to perhaps protect a part of yourself? Can't look at this or has blinded yourself to this. We're scared to look at it. And then there's the physical, more what I call like shamanic body work that I might do. I don't do that as often as I used to, but I still do that sometimes with people. And that's more of like an energetic and very precise manipulation in the body in certain ways, also with like rattles and shaman and things like that. And then there's just this straight up what I love the most, if we can get there with somebody, that quantum realm work where we can access the timeline and then go to that place and now help wounded, traumatized part of ourselves get their power back and heal what needs to be healed. And then essentially what we say, collapse that timeline and create a new timeline. And that's where our imagination is so bad. I mean, we've been trained to believe, we've been programmed to believe our imagination is just something so silly.
Yes.
Just imagination. That's just your imagination. Like the imagination is where it's at. That's
Well,
how we help ourselves. That's how we can manifest, how we can work in destiny lines. And when we reimagine a trauma timeline, and because we've anchored in another possibility from all of the realm of possibilities, we're anchoring that higher timeline, we're empowering timeline. It shifts something in the quantum realm, but it also, the brain does something different. So the brain like reorganizes itself. So now we have, you can see then how all of a sudden trauma responses change. Something shifts in somebody. It's really, truly phenomenal and magical. And yeah.
Speaking of a trauma, how do you protect yourself and energy dealing with trauma like every day and healing trauma of other people?
Many ways, many ways. On the day to day, using a lot of different plants like sage or Palo Santo, things that not only clear, but bring in a lot of protective energy, tobacco, like blowing tobacco and that. So different plants that we use in the jungle that I've been trained to work with that are super helpful. Consistently checking in with myself, my own energetic hygiene.
So how do you check in with yourself and like what do you do?
It's sort of like that body scan,
Okay.
taking time, sitting with myself to see like, are there certain areas in my body that feel kind of like stuck or resistant or heavy or pain? Are there certain emotions that I've kind of compartmentalized that really need to be fully processed? So a lot of like energetic maintenance, physical maintenance, of course, all the things, no chemicals, organic food, right? Like living in as best I can in sacred reciprocity with the planets and doing all of the things that are not going to harm our planet further. Because if we're doing something that harms the planet, we're doing something that harms ourselves.
That's true.
Right? We're the same. It's the same thing.
Mm.
So there's a lot of that. And then also just my own imagination, right? And sovereignty work that I do. And that's a big thing that I work with a lot of people who are doing like higher ascension work is sovereignty. And sovereignty is all about fortifying our energetic field, right? And using our own sovereign command. Say that, hey, this is my space, my energetic space. Nothing that would lower my vibration or harm me, and somebody is welcome in my space, right? By my sovereign command, it is so, right? Through my free will and agency of choice. So it is, and really working on and that. So it's
Okay.
levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give for someone who's interested in exploring the energy medicine or shamanic healing for the first time?
Well, there's a lot of different, or you're talking about somebody that is coming for healing, not somebody that wants to learn how to be a healer?
I think, no, somebody who wants to be a healer.
For somebody who wants to be a healer. Okay. Well, there's lots of different things available. And I always say, like, look for what's in front of you. Right? Like if something is coming across your path and you're like, wow, the same thing keeps coming in over and over and over again. Right. So I have some teachers that are some of my main teachers. I've done in-person work with them, I've done online work with them. And they just kind of kept coming in, right? And so I invested my time and energy into learning some things. There's many different courses available out there to people. I always suggest you find, you kind of do your research with that. You look at like, shamanic training program, right? And see like who's coming up. Do you want somebody local? Do you want somebody who's global? Uh, like some of the teachers that I really align with, it's because I love the energy. I just really like what they say resonate.
It's like going to a physician. No matter how people tell you this physician is great and he's the best and everything, and then you go and you don't click energetically, you won't go again.
Right.
So each one is different.
Yeah. Yeah. You really want to find somebody that just click, right? That you really see like, okay, some people like more feminine teachers. Some people like more masculine teachers. Some people like ones that have both Western and Indigenous training. That's my preference. I like somebody that's got a foot in both worlds because I have a foot in both worlds. And so I want somebody who's able to speak both of those languages, right? And find the synthesis
Yes.
between those two things. But of course, I've also had plenty of experience with just indigenous people who live in the jungle and have had, that influence as well. I've also sat with Ram Dass, right? I was with him many times in Maui. He's one of my greatest teachers, right? So I've kind of had like a lot of different teachers and it's like they just happened, right? They were just right in front of me. I didn't really have to go searching for them. They were just right there. And we always say like, like if when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yes.
And so for me, my teachers just kind of appeared and it was right there and it was very effortless for me. I think there's so many good teachers out there, and there's so many lineages, right? So there's, one of my main teachers, Ray Christ. I love him and Christ. They do Jaguar Path. They're deeply connected to Caro people, Andes of Peru. And I have also like, just a deep special connection with them. So I already had a leaning toward that kind of shamanism. Somebody else might have have more of a resonance with some Native American type of shamanism, like as far as like North American. Some people might have more of a resonance with teachers in Mexico who
Mhm.
practice their own kind of shamanism. There's so much that is available. And I feel like as long as you choose a reputable program, you're gonna learn something, right? It can be a start. It can be a, kind
Yeah.
of jump in the right direction. There's been a lot of courses that I've taken with people that all it was for me was confirmation.
Okay.
Like, right, oh, I already know this, already know that, already know this, already know. Okay, good, good. I know what I'm doing. Great. You know,
A course of validation.
yeah, course of validation. Sometimes that happens. Of course, we're always going to learn little things. There's always
Yes.
more,
Yeah.
more to learn. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's just a lot, some people are more plant based in their
Yeah.
shaman work. Some people don't work with any kind of plant whatsoever. They're working more with, like just earth itself, earth herself, or sky,
So
or
it
moon.
depends on each person.
Yeah.
The last question, I didn't feel the time. It did fly, to be honest, like an hour and 15 minutes. But I think if you have time after I read your book, we can go on another podcast discussing the book. I'm interested in that. So the last question is, how do you see the future of integrative medicine, combining traditional practices with modern healthcare?
Mhm. Well, I think it's happening, right?
Yes, me
And I'm
too.
very happy for that. I'll be doing a presentation soon with some physicians, Dr. Nelson and some people in Dr. Ruwan have asked me to come. And, it's said that the future of medicine is energy, vibration, and frequency.
I believe that, and I'm happy that many physicians are going into learning the traditional medicine.
Yes. Yeah. And, so in recognizing that everything is energy,
Mhm.
everything vibrates at a certain vibration, everything has a is attuned to a certain frequency. And that includes our organs and our emotion and our fingernails, right? Everything that, and that's where I see like overall we're headed. I would love to see the bridge happening between spirituality and
And
science.
yes,
It will be so much more powerful if they come together. You really, like science is wonderful, right? But science has spent so much time trying to prove the things that have been here for us the entire time. And so I hope that at some point there can be a recognition of like, all right, maybe these indigenous wisdom keepers actually are not the crazy little witch doctors that we thought they were, but actually some of the most highly intuitive, wise people on the planet, right? And while they're speaking a very funny language for some of us, right? And like, oh, you got a frog living inside of you, right? Well, what does that mean exactly? Right? We need some interpretation there because it doesn't mean we have a literal frog inside of us. But I have worked with some shamanic practitioners who do specific kinds of prayers and things on people where I have actually seen people vomit up a frog, right? With
really.
their eyes.
Oh my God.
And it's not like if you would dissect that frog, it would be like, oh, here's its heart and here's its liver, and all of that kind. I don't know if a frog has a liver. I'm guessing they do, but it
A whole one?
takes the shape of
Oh, that's it.
and that is symbolic,
Mhm.
right? And now we're talking about animal spirits and animal symbolism, right? Symbolic of what this person also has going on energetically, what they've been blocked from, and that tells so much by what the animal represents, right? So it's like a consolidation of energy that happens through this process, and then they release it, right? I've seen scorpions and snakes. I mean, I've seen
Wow.
it with my very eyes, like it's real. It's right in front of me, and it is magic, right? It's magic, magic, right? It's the real magic. It's white magic. It's healing magic. And, there's so much that the tribes and the indigenous peoples, the wisdom keepers have to offer us. And they've just been holding on to all of this wisdom, and they're just watching us, everybody like struggle with all the science stuff. And they're like, yeah, we know. Yeah, we know it
I
already.
think people are scared of anything that they don't know about.
Yeah.
Since
Of course.
they don't know, they feel like I don't want to know about that. Like I'm good in avoiding those kind of practices.
Absolutely. Fear is always going to play a factor in this, and that's going to play into the cognitive dissonance. And that's even going to cause us to, kind of be condescending or, patronize
Yes.
these things. So, their Western medicine brings a lot. I mean, what we can do with diagnostic is tremendous. And
Yes.
why not use that? Right. Those are wonderful tools. Like if I have people coming to me and they're like, well, I've got this and this and this going on, I'm like, have you done the diagnostic?
Yes.
Did you get your blood work done? Have you had your hormone panels? Like we got to look at, all sides of this thing here. And so Western medicine certainly brings so much in that way. I think that's where we really shine is with the diagnostics, but then also, some really truly tremendous procedures, right? With the different surgeries and things that are happening now that can be absolutely life-saving and truly transformative for people. So there's a lot of positives, right? And I think more and more people are understanding where it falls short.
Yes.
And so that's where we get to look now to the more holistic or spiritual, energetic, these kinds of things that somebody might call woo woo. So I just call real and see like, okay, well, that's the missing component here, right? What we're not doing so well with, here it is. It already exists,
I
right?
think if they combine it both, that's gonna make miracles.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course it will, right? But I think there's also just fear, you know, everybody who's coming with all of this stuff in the Western ways, and I think everybody for the most part is very well intended. Also comes with scarcity programming. Also comes with fear and lack,
Yeah.
right? Also comes with trauma. Also comes with all of the things, right? And sometimes a very limited consciousness.
And they want to stay in their comfort zone
Yes.
too. Yeah.
Yes, so that's all going to be reflected in how they're in their ability to open up, right, to some of these other things, which can be truly beneficial, right, and add in, right, so that we get to now come together and say, yes, like do this Western treatment, or maybe you do need this pharmaceutical, maybe you do need a beta blocker, maybe you do need Abilify, or whatever it might be. And here's all of the other stuff, right? That because you also need to learn how to regulate your emotion and regulate your nervous system. And you need tools for that too, right? And that's where, on the spiritual side and this more holistic healing side, that's where they shine. Like we've got all the tools.
Yes, yes, I agree. I agree. Thank you so much, Bonnie. I had a wonderful time, to be honest. And I can go on, but I'll keep some for the next time. Thank you for your time, and I can't wait to see you speaking at the event on the 8th of February, right?
I look forward to it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, and have a great, wonderful day.
Great
Thank
to
you so
meet you.
much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.